Hey everybody, welcome back to the collective. We have another excellent show sorted out for you today, and I'm very excited to bring one of our newbies, a newbie. Mark, what's up? How's it going?
Just happy to be here, bud. Thanks for the invite.
New to the whole game, like the whole game. This is what, your first podcast / live show / TV breakfast morning tiddlish? I don't even know what to call it now. It's kind of a podcast.
I taught a couple of online jujitsu lessons, but that probably isn't quite the same thing.
I'd call it the same thing. Sure. Yeah, let's call it there. So this is your second. A little different.
Okay. I'm a veteran. No, wait, that seems insulting given the company.
Oh, now you're going to insult us.
Just kick them off.
Take it all back. Take it all
back. You're out.
Oh, stolen valor. Here we go. Yeah. I mean, we're 60 seconds in and Mark stealing valor.
Stealing valor, and then Wade disappears. That was it. He's gone.
Yeah, because he was so upset with Mark stealing valor.
I don't blame him.
Who could blame him?
I had that coming.
Yeah,
you did. You deserved it.
I think he just wanted to move his place in the.
Yeah, he prefers it on the left.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. Wade.
Is that a political statement?
Yeah, I could have, but
there's lots of them bouncing around over the last couple of days. So
so we have some interesting topics set up for us today. We more than likely will have some questions, as we already have Winterstorm joining us. And let's anybody got any thoughts? Anything kicking off the top of their head that they want to, bring up to the world, or I don't know, get off your chest? I don't know. This might be the place to,
Not yet. Nope. We'll see where this takes us.
See where the conversation goes. Oh yeah, one thing that does pop to mind, because I'm looking at Wade as an example. So Wade had sent me we don't talk on the regulars on via DMs or whatnot. It's not like Wade and I are BFFs every day, but he's a great dude, and so he shoots me a little DM this morning, and it's a photo and or it's a screenshot or whatever. And it's a photo of 3 characters. 2 of them are cool, and 1 of them is a scrub. And it's of 3 podcasters, we'll call it. 2 of them are quite famous. Maybe you've heard of them. One's called Jocko, and one of them is called Jordan Peterson. Then there's some bum in between the 2 of them. And so Wade sent me the photo, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's like the bad scaffolding, the rickety old scaffolding is in the middle, and that was me. The podcast that I did over at the Canadian podcast recently. I just find it funny that somehow, and it's a weird twist of fate or whatever, the universe having a bit of a laugh at my expense, that I'm sandwiched between those 2 dudes, which is absolutely not the place that I should be ever.
I honestly thought it was very iconic. That's why I sent it to you. I was like, this is the 3 cool, influential dudes that I listen to. Here they are, all of them spread in front of me, right?
Thanks, man. Funny. Yeah, I never thought I'd be in this position, that's for sure. Or a position, whatever the heck position.
I'll twig on that weird twist of fate thing. So Shaun and I have known each other for, sort of at least to know who each other were for 20-ish years, something like
quite
that.
A while.
Right? For quite a long time, and we my family, my wife and I, we recently relocated to Calgary, and Shaun and I were just sort of exchanging, because when I first met Shaun, he was living in Calgary, and I was exchanging texts saying, hey, I'm in Calgary now, and asked where I was living. It turns out, I'm living in the area that was Curry Barracks, which is where Shaun used to live. It was a much different setting at that time.
Looked a little different.
Looked a little different. And then we did make an agreement that it's on order. I've got a plaque to put on the front to say that Shaun Taylor stayed here, and then to salute the plaque every morning. But that's
saluted every morning. Salute the brass plaque. That was a fun laugh back and forth, pal. I really enjoyed it.
Oh man, it depends on what he's saluting with.
I've had many salutes over the years. Yeah. Most of them were less than respectful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that
single digit,
mostly deserved.
Take the high fives when they're warranted, right?
So we got a random question right off the bat, and I say random question because it's put in the question. Random question. Despite the word hero being thrown around without abandon or with abandon, I'm not sure. Who is someone you consider a hero but has not been recognized as one, and why? Boom. Wade, you're getting thrown on the fire.
Oh, that's a deep one, man. Who do I see as a hero?
Who do you consider a hero?
What do I consider a hero?
That has not been recognized as
I don't think I can single one person out. I would say that anybody who is right now overcoming extreme obstacles where they feel hopeless, but they keep moving forward, that would be who I would consider as a hero. They're pushing forward despite the challenges and making it work.
I love it. Simple, to the point. Mark, what do you think?
Sure, I think like there's the, I'll call them the everyday heroes, the heroes that no one's ever going to hear about. Like my sister, she's widowed. Her husband passed away unfortunately from cancer, and her grind to get through and raise two amazing kids, one of whom who trains jiu-jitsu now with us, and he's a terrific kid, and his sister, my niece, is all equally terrific, though unfortunately not in jiu-jitsu, but we'll work on that. But I think those people who, to Wade's point, right, people who are facing adversity and muscle through it and do what they need to get through it, and have maybe the courage to reach out once in a while when they do need help. I think that's the hero, is the person that knows when to ask for help, right? I think that's something we don't always recognize the way we should, because of, I mean, I'm born in the UK, that the stiff upper lip sort of upbringing that you just keep it to yourself, and that's it. Just I think occasionally asking for help is maybe that's the heroic thing we don't recognize. Like
that's oddly something to say, that you never see a hero portrayed as someone who needs help, right? No one ever helps Superman. No one ever helps. Well, I guess Batman gets help, but yeah,
he doesn't want it though.
Only at the box office.
Shaun, what do you think?
Oh, it's a good question, man, and I think that you guys kind of answered it as I would have. The first thing that came to mind was this 3 concentric circles, the immediate concentric circle around me, which is my family. So, at any given moment, someone in my family is doing something reasonably heroic. I mean, not big deal heroic, but in my eyes, they are in a certain fashion. And then the next concentric circle is my community, and my community can be established as my little town or my community that I'm involved with on the internet. We'll call it the collective, or people who hang out with me over on my little goofy IG page or whatever, that kind of community, more of a middle ground concentric circle. Then there's the largest concentric circle wrapped around me, and that's called the world, I suppose, or the entire interwebs. And when I look at that concentric circle, it's to the point that you guys are raising, and that's the people who are every day doing something quietly that is heroic, and they never get recognized for it, but they keep pursuing their own heroism without any regard for, is anyone shining a spotlight on them? It's pretty heroic actions to work hard in a righteous manner and never be discovered. And so to that point, what is like double heroic in my eyes? It's someone who is doing the work and never gets a spotlight shined on them, but then maybe once in their life it gets shined on them, and it's just that one moment that inspires so many people around them that it's like a double hero, because they've turned other people into heroes in a sense. They can see how they can become heroes in a sense. So that's just a thought.
Those are good ones. There's this. I first off, I agree with all you guys. I think that's the biggest unsung hero is the one that is just working, right? They're struggling, they're managing, they're trying to get through the dark times or the dark period or the whatever they're doing. The single moms working 2 jobs to raise kids, or the et cetera, et cetera. Like there's lots of examples of those everyday heroes, which I think is it definitely doesn't get enough recognition. When I read that question, there was somebody that clicked into my head, and I can't remember his name. It was a elderly Indian gentleman, I believe, who spent 20 plus years building a road through a mountain by himself to create a new road to get from the village that they were in to the nearest town, instead of going around the mountain, which takes multiple hours. This was like a straight shot, and due to the fact that his wife, I believe, got sick and then died on the way around the mountain, and he was just like That's never happening again. And then decided to dig a friggin' tunnel through a mountain to make a road on his own. That kind of stuff where it's just, they don't get the recognition until, and on top of that, usually when others see what they're doing, until they see the end, they're usually going, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, why would you, like, what? That makes no sense. And he's just like, whatever, I'm going to make it work. Those are those are people who I consider heroes that they just don't get recognized enough. There was another guy, I think, again in India, who replanted an entire forest over the course of like 30 years or something like that, just because it had been deforested, and he just went out there every day.
I'll put that back.
Right? It's like, yeah, sure, let's redo this.
Well, let me challenge you with something. Why do you think that that's heroic?
In my view, I think that's heroic because it's
planting a forest.
I think the reason I see it as heroic is because the amount of work that's involved in it.
Everyone works.
Yeah.
Some work harder than planting a forest. So why do you think that's heroic?
I'm getting there. There's a multi-stage answer.
Or we'll be out of time.
Oh, we're out of time already. Sorry. And the other part of it. Oh, Hardin's showing up. Hey, buddy. Okay, to make a short answer of this is that it's a dedication to one specific thing that he wants to complete.
And not heroic.
No? Okay.
I don't think so. Do you work hard?
I do, yeah.
You're working harder right now with your son bouncing around in the back.
Yep.
I know lots of people who've worked really hard. And I don't consider that to be heroic.
Is it like you said, work hard, so that it's in the face of adversity. Is it the fact that it is for the greater good rather than
now we're getting
selfish?
There we go.
Selfish motivation.
Thank you,
right?
Mark, for making Chance's point.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying. I was a little distracted.
Otherwise, we'd been out of time.
Because the motivation is what sets it apart, right? And I'm not saying, it's if you are right-minded and living in a righteous way, which is something you said earlier, which I think is an important point, because that's what we should all aspire to, right? Like, we've all done good and bad things, but if we're always, the intent is we aspire to that which is righteous. I think that is noble. And so what's a hero? It's someone who has an inner nobility. What am I doing? Like, I'm striving for something in the face of adversity for the greater good, not my own good. And I may benefit, but the fact is it's for the greater good.
Yeah, bam. So now I'd like to throw one more thing, and it's not that I'm challenging everyone. I just want to like can we scramble down this rabbit hole a little bit?
What you do?
And boil it down.
And so we talk about what a hero may be, or this kind of stuff is really good conversation. But then, how do you contextualize? So Chance had talked about the single mom who's running 2 jobs and struggling to blah blah blah, etc. That meant nothing to me about 20 years ago. I just thought, hey, single mom, that's got to be hard. But I just didn't understand. When I started understanding is when I had 2 kind of almost babies, our 2 boys, when they were born. Doreen, my wife, was busy, as you know, Mark, the engineering world. She's busy just like you're busy. And so I became the stay-at-home dad while also running high-performance coaches or athletes around the world from home in between changing diapers. So I became a single dad. And you change 1 million diapers as a single dad. And I'm not going to say it's harder than being a single mom. It isn't. But it was pretty hard for me as I'd show up to, the playground, and all the moms would look at me, and I'm the only dude there. And they're evaluating me like I'm a pedophile or a common criminal, or, what are you doing at the playground with all these little kids? And so there was many factors that were challenging to me as quote unquote a single dad that helped me understand, holy moly, it's gotta be freaking way harder than I thought to be a single mom. So 20 years ago, I didn't think it was heroic, but changing a million diapers and trying to do almost a quasi single dad thing, I got a sense of how difficult it must be to be a single mom. Then it became heroic to me. But I mean, you can look at a poster that says single moms have it hard. And if you haven't changed a million diapers, it's just a poster that then you wrap in your head like,
yeah,
yeah,
you don't have an appreciation for the depth.
But there's no appreciation for the depth. That's right, Mark. So, it's for us to better understand what hero means through a contextualized basis, and then who's contextualizing it. If you've never left your small town, we'll call it BC or Alberta, if you're in the 500-person town and you aren't getting broad exposure to the world around you, you think someone is a hero if they take a shopping cart back. And in a way, they kind of are. It's still the righteous action on a micro level. To my point, there are micro actions and there are massive heroic moments that will stand the test of time. They're the big Hollywood moments, the heroic moments. And so a lot of attention gets paid to those, whereas not nearly enough attention gets paid to the shopping cart being taken back. And I don't want to make a big deal about the shopping cart thing. It's an example of how contextuality matters.
It's one of the little things.
It's experience based, right? Like Winter Storm had asked, like, despite the word hero being thrown around without abandon, you can use it for everything. Everybody can be in their own way a form of hero. But yeah, I think the experience is the way that contextualizes it and puts it into perspective of, I've done it. People have done it harder. They're the heroes for doing it. Going back to, I empathize with your point there, Shaun. I'm like the only dad on my kids' pack right now, which is I'm the vice chair of it. So I even have an, so I get it from all angles, right? Yeah. It's fun. So I totally feel that.
I get the same thing when I was taking the boys out. Now I had the benefit of Amber was working, but she was coming home every night. So there was a little trade-off, in the evening where I would just be completely frazzled with the boys, and I'd just be, oh, she's home, okay, cool, tag out me if you're in, but there's been lots of times where she's been off on a trip, or she's been. So I definitely empathize. And my thought on that, on the Hollywood heroism, is that they're acts that are so grand that you don't have to contextualize them. Right? Like you hear a Medal of Honor citation and you're like, oh, okay, yep, that makes perfect sense. Or, some of the stories we used to, I'm sure you've seen this, Wade, in your school, in the armored school, they have the little statues with like the Victoria Cross and the story and the citation, all that stuff, right? Yep. And you read those and you're like, yep, that's a hero.
Yep.
Yep, no problem. But you're right, Shaun, is that it's the context piece of it that I think here's the question. Do you think we actively don't look for that context, or do you think it's more just like a passing over because we're not actively looking for it?
I think it's not discussed until now.
Mark, what do you got?
At least today.
I was just thinking that we don't. It's like like you said, we're passive. So you don't know somebody else's story, and we don't always care to. Because it's a fine line, right? You want to be aware, you want to be a good citizen, so that you're compassionate to others and all that stuff. But you also don't want to pry. You don't want to get in somebody's business. So there's this sort of line you're trying to walk with, like, I want to be there for you if you need me as a good member of society. But I also don't want to. I want to respect your privacy, because we all kind of got our thing, and you want to. There's fences and there's fences, but I think that, passive's the right word. We're just sort of maybe not paying as much attention as we could to those micro heroic moments. It's as you said. So where Curry Barracks, as I said before, so where I live, there's a like a promenade you can walk down, and they've got in bronze plaques like the one we'll get for Shaun.
It's nice, yeah.
It's with the descriptions of all the Victoria Cross winners and why they won it, and it's profound. You read those stories, and as you said, there's no arguing. You're like, you can immediately put yourself there and imagine what a challenge that was, and say, I couldn't have done that. That person did that, and it is profound, right? That's what I mean. But there are those other moments where like Shaun was saying, right? A single mom, oh, that's hard. You don't until you know how hard it is. It doesn't resonate the way it could until you have a real appreciation for that challenge. And so you don't really, when I say, you don't know somebody else's story. You don't know what they had to overcome to do that small thing, right? Like I think that's something to be aware of when we, as people, we tend to be fairly quick to judge. So maybe sometimes you don't know what somebody else's story is, and spare a moment to think, maybe they're facing something that I don't know about.
That's a good point. Shaun, you want to finish off your thought there? You had a...
Yeah, no, I'd just like to touch a bit more on what Mark just said, and he's right, classically right in that simple statement of you just don't know the struggles that someone else has been through. Now, here's the thing: the counter to that is everyone's gone through something, and until you can get out of your own thing, like, oh, my world is so hard, my life is so hard, it's so difficult to be me, until you can kind of move out of that to some degree, you can't understand how difficult it can be for others who aren't living the life that you've lived, because you're so busy contextualizing how hard your life is. And you may give the empty statement or correct, Mark, the blinders on. You can wear the hat or the t-shirt that says, I respect your struggles, but unless you get out of your own struggles in your head, you ain't respecting anyway. You're just kicking out empty sentences. So you got to get out of you and into the world in order to be able to have that conversation with the world that says, I get how hard it is for everyone else as well. If you're just focused on you, the as well part never actually occurs.
That's a great point. Wade, Mark, any more thoughts on that?
I had one, but then it fled away. It was, the getting into your own head, getting out of your own space. And I think the biggest thing is when you see someone who's really struggling through something, but they're still compassionate to others in their own right, where they're putting their own stuff aside, saying, you know what, yeah, my life sucks right now, but you're having a hard time too. Let me help you.
Yeah, I dig
that. I think would go back to more of a definition of a hero. Somebody who's able to put their stuff aside and selflessly help someone else. And not that they're ignoring themselves, because I know a lot of people do this. I'm guilty of it. I will help other people to not address my own issues. So I will constantly take on your stuff, so I don't have to face my own. I've stopped doing that recently, where I've actually kind of put up a wall. A lot of people have been pushed away. I'm working on myself to effectively, betterly help other people where I can understand their plights a little better. Whereas before it was that empty statement of, yeah, your life sucks too. Mine really sucked too. You know why? And then it was not a comparison, but it was like, how hard is your hard compared to?
I'm way harder.
And you can,
right?
And you can either use helping somebody as a distraction to your own, so you can kind of put that aside, like you're saying, or you can pause that. And I think then, and maybe that's like teammate or comrade, or all these words that I think I think those are important words, because sometimes that in shouldering your burden and helping with somebody else's, they will in turn will help yours, and you're stronger together. Like that, I think that can be really, really healthy when we do that well.
And ultimately, I think we could teach each other other things as well. Like I might learn something in the process of helping you that may help me that I was stuck on. So it's a mutually beneficial way, right?
It's kind of like the whole concept of the collective that we are learning together, growing.
I just wish it was a model that had like spread across the entire country.
Right. Yeah. So now this actually does lead into what the topic. It's actually kind of nice how this ties into what we were going to talk about today anyway. But I'm going to give you a bit of a preface here too, because Shaun and I like to do, I can't say like to, it happens quite regularly. We get green room gold. We stop recording, and then we start talking about serious stuff.
Which we could do in these live podcasts.
We could do right now. We really could.
Even right now.
Even right now, if I were to, speed up the show and get to a topic. But the point of this is that we were chatting one day, and he asked a question. We were talking about lessons that we had learned and how most of this information isn't really new, right? Like the tools of leadership, if you go back thousands of years, are the same tools of leadership, and the tools of living a well-balanced life, if you go back farther, they're all pretty much the same, and that the information's out there. So the question really is, why do you think we need the books or the lessons or the motivational speakers or the whatever tool we use in order to get those lessons? And then on top of that, do you think it's a form of not quite separation, but maybe keeping the lesson at a bit of a distance from yourself so you don't entirely go, oh yeah, no, this is totally me? And so the question is, how do we manage the escapism of reading books to learn the lessons? As in, let me give you an example. Let's say you read Extreme Ownership from Jocko Willink, and you're like, oh, I need to take more ownership in my life. And then you start looking around saying, that person's not taking any ownership, and that person's not taking any ownership, and that, right? And so how do we deal with that? How do we deal with the escapism of reading the books without really learning the lessons? Who wants to take
how do you make it how do you make it real for yourself? How do you actually that's well, because that's like certainly, like, for whatever your choices are for entertainment content can sort of maybe point you as to what it is you're trying to get. Are you trying to escape your life? Or like my wife really enjoys true to life stories where it's an emotional connection, and again, like makes that ability to sort of put yourself in their shoes and imagine what that life was like and really appreciate it. And I'm a Star Wars, Marvel, as far from reality as you possibly can be kind of guy. But if you want to think about it, some of the things that, like in Empire Strikes Back, Yoda says, do or do not, try, do or do not, there is no try. Like these things, right? Like those are super profound if you can take that out and then maybe think about apply it to your real life. So how do you take a book or a film or something that you've heard and internalize it, make it real, rather than it just being, like you said, an escape from reality and then an ability to judge everyone else for not doing it properly? I think there's a level of self-awareness, right? Everything comes down to how realistic is your own image of yourself. And I think that gets back to a little bit like about how you're dealing with your working on yourself to have emotional, like help with other people's problems and all. You need to really understand yourself before I think you can be effective in doing those things. And maybe that's it. That's how do you internalize content? You need to have a good understanding of yourself so that you can then make it real for you and then begin applying it, rather than it being a cool lens to judge others through.
That's a good point. Wade?
Yeah, I would piggyback off that to widen that lens to go to a fisheye. I think it has to be, you can read as many books as you want, but until you practice the knowledge itself, you're not going to learn a damn thing. So I can read a PAM on a section attack all day, but until I get out there and actually do it and bruise my knees and slap my elbows, and you have to read it, understand it. It's the EDI concept, right? Explain, imitate, right?
Explain, demonstrate, imitate.
And then explain, demonstrate, imitate. And then you move past that. So the escapism of the book is you read the thing that reflects in you. Like, yeah, I see that the accountability part, right? Jocko's telling you to be accountable for yourself. Instead of do that, that's why you always point with one, 3 fingers are pointing back. I think that's why all our army guys knife hand. It's always your fault. But it's the take that hand and go this way. Actually pokey chest yourself. And like, you have to challenge yourself, and it's hard. It is hard to look in that mirror and actually apply the accountability to yourself. What are you doing in your everyday that makes you accountable to be able to turn around and say to somebody else, hey man, I don't think you're being accountable to this, and not blame them for it. Just point it out. Say, this is a better way to go. Do you think you could do that? See if they'll take the bait. But if not, you got to have the understanding of yourself before you can apply it to others. But you have to live it first. So you have to have the experience, not just the knowledge.
That's a good point. Shaun, you want to round us off?
Yeah, sure. I would say that I struggle with this question based on the term escapism, because I don't really enter into anything in an escapist way. So I'll use Wade's example of the section attack. If you want to learn, if you have to do a section attack, you pick up the PAM that says infantry section attack. But before that step, there's another step, which is, what am I doing today? Oh, I'm doing a section attack. Oh, I better go learn how to do a section attack. I better go get a book to do a section attack. I better read it. I better understand it, and then I better go do it. And so before anything starts, you've got to consider why you're starting it. And I think that that's one of the steps that is kind of missing critically in the process, because without the deeper consideration of the intention of your actions in the future, then you just pick up books, random books all over the place. You'd be reading Harlequin romance books. You'd be reading books about whatever biology. You'd be reading books about how to fly a kite. And that's all cool. I do those kind of things as well, but I do them with intention. Mm-hmm. And so the previous book that I just finished on Paddy Mayne, I was reading that not only for the history of the British SAS, the formation of it, etc., but I was reading it to get leadership. The entire process of that book for me was to more deeply contemplate leadership. The book that I'm reading right now, I've put it back in my reading spot. I flashed it this morning in my live chat, is the Richard Feynman. Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, a theoretical physicist. I think everyone knows who Richard Feynman is. But when I picked up that book, it's not that I wanted to learn how to do theoretical physics, because I couldn't. What I picked it up for was to open my mind in an area that I haven't done much consideration in. But as it turns out, his book is very approachable, very readable. It's actually really enjoyable. And so as I was moving through the book, my intention was to better understand Feynman and his thought processes in order for me to improve my thought processes. I'll never be a theoretical physicist, but I know I can improve my thought processes through the scientific method and et cetera, et cetera. But what I came away from the book with most of all, which was surprising to me, is the reinforcement of the importance of curiosity in life, wanting to solve the puzzle in front of you. And I feel that, if I pointed someone to the Richard Feynman book and said, read that, I think you'll enjoy it. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I need to preface that question with, consider reading the Richard Feynman book, because he really explores the idea of curiosity. Maybe you've never thought about it in a way that he has. I encourage you to read it.
I think that's absolutely, because otherwise you've got that, if you don't give people that flavor, then maybe they pick it up, they look at the cover and they go, I don't care about physics, they put it back. But if you're saying it's about curiosity, let me see how that, what's kind of underlying there. What's the part that's not about physics, it's about how he learned about physics, kind of thing. I think that's, they talk about marketing. When you market a product, you don't sell the what, you sell the why. People need to understand why they want something. And I think that's beginning with understanding, why do I want to read this book? Why am I going to work on attack drills? The why helps you focus what it is you're about to do. And there may be wonderful peripheral things you learn as you go through that journey, but understanding why I've embarked on this course of action, I think, makes it more likely you will end up at the place you're intending to get to.
And to tie your why and Star Wars together, Mark, since you are a fan of that genre, as am I, it's all good. If you're a hater on Star Wars, you're not my friend.
Yeah, stop listening right now.
Move right along.
These are not the guys you're looking for.
Move along. These are not your droids. So to tie that together, Mark, if someone said, well, why do you watch Star Wars? And I would say, well, it's not to distract myself with lightsabers and spacecrafts, though it was when I was a young boy, like 12 or 14.
Yep.
That was then, this is now. How did I explain it to my boys when they were excited about seeing Obi-Wan Kenobi for the first time? I let them flow through that process. I let them do them. That entire series, that was all for them to take in. But the second time around, when someone's drawing a lightsaber, they're focused on the actions of a lightsaber. I'm focused on the next question to them, which is, why do you think he drew the lightsaber then?
That's what I was thinking too.
Do you think he needs to draw the lightsaber? What if he hadn't have drawn the lightsaber? What if he didn't have a lightsaber? Where do you think and why do you think he was given a lightsaber? And so to me, it's not about the pizzazz of the explosions. Man, explosions are a dime a dozen nowadays. They're not even a story. They're a distraction. The real meat and potatoes is the whys of the world, the much deeper considerations of how and why people do the things they do. Not what they did, but why they did.
It's a great point. And if you really want to see explosion, just watch a James Cameron movie, right? You'll see it. You'll see enough of them throughout.
If you want Michael Bay in slow motion.
Michael Bay, yeah, there you go.
Michael Bay all the way.
Explosions plus giant robots.
There you go. I think one thing I really enjoy about, I guess, fantasy or sci-fi or anything like that is that it enables you to engage in ethical and moral dilemmas outside the physical realm. And so it's not, you're not looking at what is happening right now in life. And there's a great example of this. My son last year in grade 3, their whole curriculum for that year was based around a fantasy realm, kind of like Lord of the Rings style. And what they were able to do was utilize the fantasy realm and integrate issues that are happening right now. So they were learning about South America, and in particular, I believe it was Peru. And that was the land of the orcs. And the orcish people were being subjugated by a foreign power, and they were being made to mine and do like all kinds of like physical labor and stuff like that, and enabled the kids to look at that actual physical, moral, and ethical dilemma without thinking about it as, other human beings. It gave them a separation from it that enabled them to engage that thought process without it be freaking them out. Basically, is what I would.
That's super. That's interesting, right? Because you're using that escapism to make it a thought experiment and put it in the abstract, which helps you wrestle with it in I'll call it a safer way before you actually then move it into the real world, and that can make it easier to absorb and appreciate and work with intellectually.
It worked out quite well.
That was way cooler than my grade 3. I'll tell you that.
Way cooler than my grade 3 too. I don't know, but they were asking me. He would come home and he would ask me questions that were like really deep ethical questions on whether or not these things are right, or whether or not we should allow these things, or whether or not maybe the elves should invade that country and take it over and they can make it all right again. And I was like, well, that's another question. That's another issue. And that's another. And so I think maybe in the escapism of books, or the escapism of another realm or another thought process, gives us a natural detachment that enables us to wrestle with it without looking at the real world implications. Any thoughts?
It's why I started Space Ninja.
There you go, Space Ninja. Which, by the way, get back on that.
I almost talked about it this morning, but I got distracted. But that's why I started Space Ninja, because Space Ninja has no limitations in time and space. He has no political limitations, religious, no race, no nothing. I have a eternal universe in front of me that I can create it in any fashion. And so with no limitations in time and space, I can talk about the things that are relevant to the meat and potatoes of the matter, rather than talking about what dilithium crystals are used in the spacecraft. And so I think that science fiction, or any fiction that isn't locked to time and space, allows you to be more playful, and it strips out the nonsense of we'll call it the politics of the day, that which is merely a distraction. And certainly it's a distraction now, and 1,000 years from now, nobody will even remember because it's unimportant. Everyone's busy focused on the things that are unimportant, while the things that are important aren't getting dealt with. And that's the meat and potatoes of things. Whoever's in power in any country doing whatever they're doing, it's more often than not focused on in the wrong perspective. It's all about the minutia of the day, when really it's about our species just becoming better. And that's such a broad statement that you can get lost in the weeds of focusing on the daily news rather than just focusing on being decent to your neighbor.
Yeah, that's a good point. Wade, Mark, any thoughts on that?
There's a huge thing about the risk of the ego, right? Like everything comes down to somebody servicing their ego through greed or whatever. So I think that's like Shaun said, that's a massive topic. You could go on and on.
So then how do we better engage that? How do we as individuals better engage the larger society in order to better us as one society? How do we as individuals do that?
Do your best. And collectively, we don't.
Yeah.
And so if we did, then these topics at hand right now, the conversations of being awesome, we'll call it, it would be commonplace, because it would be institutionalized within our society that everyone's expected to just do better, do your best. And let's pretend for a moment it's now 100 years in the future. Your robot wakes you up to the wake up alarm, and you roll out of bed, and there's a screen hovering in front of you, and you just get two buttons to press: be positive or be negative. And so you get to physically touch one or the other. And as we talked about the other day, you know, you're a jackass if you pick, I want to suck today, the first thing that you wake up in the morning. But if you're awesome, you're going to pick, I want to be positive today. Yeah. And so you wake up in the morning 100 years in the future with your hovering robot making you make a decision. And if everyone had a hovering robot in society, and everyone in society managed to choose, I'm going to be positive today, if nothing else, at a bare minimum, it would at least calibrate our society for the need to make a choice first thing in the morning as to what you're going to represent yourself as for the rest of the day.
But doesn't every interaction give you that choice every time? Like over and over throughout your day?
For some, if they're being thoughtful, if they're being as thoughtful as, I get a binary choice right now, red or green, good or not, bad or rocks, all of these choices that we make thoughtlessly, that then by the end of the day, somehow at the end of the day, we find that we've just done all kinds of wrong. We've been all kinds of negative, because without thoughtful action or thoughtful calibration on the subject, first thing in the morning, you get to decide. But if no one's deciding, if no one's writing it down on a piece of paper every morning next to their bedside table when they wake up, they just enter into the day like it's Groundhog Day. They get on with their program. Maybe they're ebbing and flowing between positive and negative thoughtlessly. Mm-hmm. It's the thoughtful actions that matter.
I think it's that exact point. You become a drone to that point, right? Where you're either get up in the morning and you're going to throw on Cool Ranch, or you're going to put on your sneakers.
That's right.
What slippers?
Get those Dorito bag slippers, man.
Dorito slippers,
right, baby.
So
are they comfy?
Yeah, it's exactly.
They're slippery.
They're slippery. And I think this goes into, and I'm going to break it out here, the same Star Wars analogy we were using earlier. Try not, do, or do not. That is the key is, if you set your mind at the very beginning, you open your eyes and you're like, do. That puts you on that path. If you select do not, that puts you on that path. If you don't select anything, where are you going?
By default,
someone else will select for you, and you're not going to like the outcome.
Someone else selects for you, exactly. And then, because of that, now you're reacting. I mean, we see this in jiu-jitsu all the time too, right? If you're not first, you're last, right? You're constantly reacting. Versus, you have to choose one. If you want to be negative, cool, be negative. There are people that wake up in the morning and they press that I want to be negative button. They choose to
very few though.
Few.
Part of it, I think, is they're maybe stuck in a loop that they can't.
Very
not
few.
Push
That's
that
right.
button.
That's right.
Yeah. You're right. And I'm not saying that that's a majority of people by any means. I just mean that there are people that wake up and they're like, you know what? Screw the world. And they're just going to be mean and angry, and that there are people out there.
No, they don't actively choose that when they first wake up. They default into it thoughtlessly when they wake up. Because when they went to bed, their hate-filled head that they were stewing on before they fell asleep, when they wake up, it's straight back to the hot bowl of stew hate.
I think the thing about thoughtless, right? Like, it's all about being thoughtful, being mindful of what, like, it's, I don't even remember where I first heard it, but it's something I repeat over and over and over. It's free to be kind, and never pass up the opportunity to be the best part of someone's day. Because if you're checking out your groceries, whatever, if you're the one person they saw smile and say, hey, thanks, have a good day, whatever, that's what they're going to remember. They're going to go home and say, everyone is crappy. Hey, that was that one guy that said it was decent, right? Like it's nothing. It takes no effort. It takes no more or less effort than being rude or grumpy or saying nothing, defaulting to the null response. You can just be kind in that moment, and if you apply that, well, eventually it will become the habit. And instead of defaulting to the I'm going to be a dick today, you're going to have your default mode of interaction is more positive, right?
Yeah, you know, the difficult part as I see it though, pal, is this, and I was in these shoes back in the day, or not back in the military, but you know, in my life several years ago, I wasn't interested in the word namaste. I just wasn't. And I wasn't interested in live, laugh, love as a thing that hangs over the pantry door. And I wasn't interested in be your best, do your best because you can be your best or whatever. All of these phrases, all of these sort of like, you know, hippie sort of statements. And I'm kind of a hippie myself, but I just couldn't get right with all of the whale music and patchouli and rose petals and all of that stuff. I just couldn't get right with it. And so a lot of the good advice that I was given, though well-intentioned, was delivered to me incorrectly. They were righteous wisdoms, but they were wrapped in a package of patchouli that I just couldn't work through. And so what I've been trying to figure out how to do for some time now is not pass along wisdom, but have conversations that don't make guys like me feel uncomfortable. You know, like we can talk about being positive or negative. We can talk about crushing it or not, but I'm never going to wrap it in patchouli. And so there's guys and girls who need to get the patchouli wrap, and there's guys and girls who don't need the patchouli wrap. So as long as there's enough people out there in the world that are punching positive the first time they wake up in the morning, and they get on with being cool and delivering cool ideas and cool intentions, then cool people will get that. And for the other people who don't, you know, vibe like a Fonzie or whatever, maybe they need it namaste style. But as long as they wake up in the morning, punch positive, and then get on chasing how they interpret the world around them through the various languages, I would never be where I'm at right now if there was only one path and it was called the patchouli path. So you've got to have intention. Even the word intention bugs me, but I know it's the right word. I'm just not right with the softness of intention. And so you've got to have the right intention, and then you've got to go find how you're going to execute against that intention. And by find it, I mean explore. It's not about finding your gang, or it's not about finding your tribe, or it's not about, because you can have many. I've got several gangs that I hang with. And so you've just got to go explore. And by explore, I mean, if you're not doing great right now and your intention is to do better, whatever you're in right now, whatever gang you're in, it's not serving you as well as you need to be served. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having these thoughts of how do I do it better? Why am I waking up negative all the time? So you have to explore or expand your awareness to find out what works for you bit by bit by bit until maybe you've got several patchouli paths. But you can't look at trying to do better through a very tight lens of my neighbor says it can only be done this way and it doesn't work for me, so I'm just not going to improve anymore.
That's a great point. There's a really great question here, and I want to hit you guys with it. What if the buttons were positive, negative, and sausages? Most would choose sausages.
Yeah, it's a fair comment.
Yeah. But that it actually lays into it is that even if you choose sausages, then what?
Right? Somebody else hits your sausages, regular button.
Somebody else is going to hit that button for you.
While you're eating your sausage sandwiches, someone's pushing your button for you. So enjoy your sandwiches. You can enjoy them all you want, but guess what?
Let's pull on that diet thread, because I think that's an interesting.
I agree.
Like Sean's analogy. I like that. Like it's the patchouli wrap. When somebody's trying to like you said, if your tribe or your gang aren't right, well, maybe they're partially right. It's like a diet. Like if you find somebody tells you you need more fiber in your diet, and you're like, but I don't like spinach. Actually, there's a bunch of different ways to get fiber. It isn't only spinach. So you just start like, or I think maybe it's like when you're building a salad, it's like I can eventually accumulate the things in there that make it work for me nutritionally, right? Like, but there's a lot of variability. You got to find the thing that kind of works. And it doesn't necessarily mean wholesale, get rid of this. It may mean I need to augment it with look for the ways to supplement and improve it, because it isn't necessarily all wrong, right? It's that we're not necessarily a binary thing. It's like, oh, there's actually a light green button as well, and I want to get towards darker green. What do I need to maybe it's not so much a button as a dial I can adjust, like by involving by reading other books, by finding those, researching the world. That's the thing, like broaden your horizons, I guess, at the heart of what I'm trying to get at in my
small-minded people, man. You don't seek small-minded people to get universal wisdom.
It starts with the choice, right? In your if you choose positive or negative, right? You choose positive. Then once you've made that choice, then you can see the nuance in positive, right? Then you can start seeing that, oh, there is a dial to it. Oh, okay, how do I make it's not, I was talking with somebody else on one of Tools for the Toolbox podcasts, was, a lot of people, when they want to get better, they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to make the choice, I'm going to be better. And then they're like, I'm going to eat right and go to the gym, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do, and you're like,
yeah, that's called January 1st.
Right? And that's exactly
that list is too big.
Yeah, right. And
January 2nd, I failed.
So once you decide, once you make that choice and you say, you know what, I'm going to be positive. How are you going to be positive? And then you can start getting into the nuance of being positive. How does that actually affect my life? What is it that I want to be positive in? How do I want to be better? Do I want to be physically? Is it emotional? Is it a spiritual thing? And then you can start finding that lane that you can start working on. Wade, you said it earlier, right at the beginning, was like, I'm working on getting my boundaries up so that I can work on myself rather than just taking on everybody else's stuff. That takes a point where you have to go, oh, I'm doing this wrong.
Yep.
Right? Okay, how do I do this? Do I want to keep doing what I'm doing, or do I want to change? Okay, I want to change. What do I want to change about that? And that creates another branch. And that creates another branch. And then you can find that nuance dial where you go, oh, this is what I'm working on.
Right. And there's a prioritization that's going on there, right? I'm putting things in an order. Okay, I'm going to work this is the big one, then this, because I can't eat an elephant all at once. So I'm going to probably eat the good parts first. I won't, because I don't eat meat, but you know what I mean.
But that's part of it.
You're all about the salad.
Oh yeah.
I'm all about the salad. I love me
trying to make the weeds palatable.
But that's a great point, though. What you were saying, Mark, was that there's multiple ways to get protein, right? It doesn't have to be meat. It doesn't have. You talked about fiber or protein or enlightenment or strength or speed or name a thing that you want to get better.
Name a thing, yeah.
And then there's nuance in it.
Find your zen, right? Find what works for you. Not everyone can break a rock garden, but some people find that peace in punching holes through paper with a gun. So whatever your zen is, find it and use it.
They do, and I'd like to add a little bit more to that, because I think it's critical to everything that we're talking about right now. To simplify it, it's cool to get on whatever patchouli path you want to get. Maybe you want to become the Salad Master 9000, or you want to punch a bunch of holes in the target, or whatever. Like everyone's got their thing. And where I find it goes a little sideways, mostly for veterans, I would say, is they find their thing and then they become dogmatic about it. And let's call it, I'm going to be a badass. Maybe they were a badass 20 years ago, and maybe today they still think they're a badass, but they're still focusing on being a badass. And it's very one-dimensional. And how I like to run my life, I like to be a bit of a badass. I like to be a bit of a nerd. I like to be a bit of an intellectual. I like to be a bit of a slacker. I like to be a bit of a clown. I like to do a bit of a lot of things. I like to be a little more three-dimensional than one-dimensional. And so if my entire life was focused on just looking hard, I'd be dumb as a brick. But I don't want to be dumb as a brick. I want to be well-rounded. And so the more I educate myself, the more I focus on intellectualism, it doesn't detract away from being a badass. It just makes you a bigger badass, in my opinion. You're more capable, more competent, more able to move through the world in a fashion that can be heroic for others. There's no heroes that I can think of that I've looked at them and thought, wow, man, that guy, he can barely blink. He's that dumb. I just don't think of them as heroic. Even the average person should be able to demonstrate some level of nerdism, some level of ability to think anything other than burpee. You got to be more well-rounded than burpee.
Yeah,
got to be able to do push-ups as well.
Yeah, by February 22nd, by the way.
There you go. And so it actually,
if there's push-ups involved, I'm out.
Yeah, there's a great kind of final point on that, Shaun. So I really appreciate you bringing the fine tip onto that, because it's true. And you know, you don't. I was just thinking that you will never be a hero trying to be a hero, right? So you just do what you need. You do what you're doing, you know, and then go, I want to be better. Okay, well, how do I be better? And just keep taking that path.
Do the right thing, even when it's the hard thing.
Yep.
Right. And I think that will get, like you said, that puts you in the right path. And when I say right, be kind when you don't want to be, help others when you're tired, all those things. Like if you're always trying to do the right thing, even when it's the hard thing, and occasionally we luck out and the right thing's the easy thing, but I don't feel like that happens a bunch. Just do the right thing even when it's the hard thing. And I think we're all going to be, all of us together collectively, it'll be a better place.
I think the big focus is the why. Focus on the why you're making those choices. Why are you choosing the positive route? Is it for yourself? Do you just want to make yourself feel great? Or are you trying to be a good example? For me personally, it's for my kids. I want to see the example of this is what a good person does. This is what a good person can do. I'm pushing my best to do the best I can. And hopefully you guys follow that same path. I'm blazing the path for you so that those choices are easier. And once I'm gone, you know how to make the right choices and keep that flame going and not go the wrong way.
I like that. Keep the flame going, right? You pass it.
We lay a foundation. That's it. Yep. And we'll finish off with a quote, and I'm probably gonna butcher it, but it goes something like this: the truest man will plant trees of the shade in which he will never know. And I think that's really it. You got to lay a foundation, and then the next generation hopefully builds on that foundation, and then you just keep building forward, and that's the way to go. Before we shut her down, any final points? Any little thoughts on books, heroes, betterment, choosing paths instead of sausages? I don't know. Any final thoughts? Wade, you're up.
What are your favorite sausages?
The good breakfast ones. Definitely breakfast time sausage. No, I think it's just keep pursuing. Like it's sometimes you lose the sight of what it is you're going after, but this is what your tribe and your people come in to help you on that guidance. You have questions, ask them. They're not going to walk the path for you, but they can bumper you back onto the right way and kind of give you the guidance of their experience. I've done things similar. Let's go this way. It worked out for me. It may not for you, but it's another tool for you to use along your way. Be a Swiss Army knife. Don't just be one sharp blade. Every tool has a purpose. Be one that has many purposes.
That's a good line. I might have to steal that for Tools for the Toolbox. That'll be awesome.
Mark,
you got any final thoughts?
Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me on. First time, that's really nice. I feel like I'm in the presence of greatness, and I really do appreciate your generosity. This has been great. I like the Swiss Army knife analogy. I think that's really good. And I think surround yourself with people who not only support you but keep you grounded in reality, who give you honesty, and maybe soft honesty with a little patchouli around it, but still that are honest with you. And that's
instead of getting punched in the face by honesty.
Everybody likes the hard honesty.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Shaun, final thoughts?
Yeah, this was a great conversation. I hope people, when they're listening to these kind of conversations, are thinking as deeply as we're trying to talk or communicate with each other. And so if you're listening to this, don't just listen to our words, listen to your words. Think about what we're saying through the contextualization of your mind and how you live your life. And so the very, very simple action of making choices, positive or negative, when you first wake up in the morning, it's less about making the decision and it's more about understanding why you're making the decision. We all make decisions every single second of our lives. Most of the time it's thoughtlessly. But the more time you can spend thinking about the why, the better you'll get to know yourself. And the better you get to know yourself, the better you'll do life. And others will see that. And through your actions, you will influence others around you to do better. Just think about why, and we'll all do a whole lot better as a group.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think one of the points you taught me very early on when we first started hanging out was the fact that it is a choice. And once I realized that, then I started going down the path like, oh, of course. Well, of course it's a choice. Like
it sucks when you have to be responsible for your brain.
Dang it! Dang.
Wait a minute, I'm in charge of me.
Wait a sec, it's me.
Dang, yeah. But yeah, you're absolutely right. If we could, as a society, become more thoughtful, just in general, I think that's the step forward that we need to all take, and hopefully that would allow us to, well, I don't know, maybe learn, build, and grow as a collective, perhaps. Thanks for joining us, everybody. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and you like and hit the little bell thingy for the notifications so that you're got the heads up on every day we go live. And we'll see y'all tomorrow.
Thanks, boys.